Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Brianne Beebe. I'm a high school math teacher and a productivity mentor for secondary teachers. Today I wanted to talk about how to keep a clutter-free classroom. So many times when I ask teachers what their biggest organization struggle is, it comes down to clutter, that there is something that is taking up a lot of space and it's stressing them out. A lot of times it's paper, sometimes it is science lab equipment. It could be manipulatives, things for projects and activities, supplies, you name it, like we get it. It's everywhere. So we're gonna talk about how you can kind of tame the clutter without getting into super specifics, because a lot of the things that I just mentioned have specific solutions that, unless we're going like item by item, it's kind of hard to talk about it. And I mean like putting your paper in certain folders, things like that, like having certain bins or boxes, baskets for your stuff. We're gonna step away from that part of the conversation. We're going to talk about how to kind of maintain a clutter-free space. Don't get me wrong, I love talking about ways to organize things, but trying to keep it like short and concise for a video, we'd be here all day if we were talking about that kind of stuff. The first tip is to have a place for everything. So you know, a place for everything and everything in its place. Easier said than done. And a lot of times what is piling up for us are things that we have not determined a place for. So you want to go through these items that are accumulating and first ask yourself whether or not you need to keep it. Because if you can chuck it or pass it on to someone else, if you can just get rid of it, it makes your life so much easier. And then we don't have to worry about a whole lot else. But you know, not everything in our classroom is necessarily our property to dispose of whenever we want. So sometimes you have to keep things. So when you have to keep something, you need to think about how often you need to access that item. If you need to get to it frequently, then you want to make sure you're putting it someplace that's easy to get to. You don't want to make it really difficult to get to when you need it, because then you're just going to be frustrated and then reluctant to put it back when you're done with it. You also want to consider the best place for it. Where could you put it that it's not going to take up a ton of space? And that is where your organization apparatus comes into play, just thinking about where you could put it, where it could go. Another thing to consider is whether or not you want students to have access to it. So I have one of those teacher toolboxes, you know, with all the little drawers, they're labeled, they have all my supplies in it. I have that behind my desk on purpose, because behind my desk is a no student zone. It's like my little corner of the classroom. So putting that there is letting students know this is not for you, you do not touch it. And then if I were to put it somewhere else on the other side of my classroom where students gather their supplies, that would be sending them the message of this is here for you to use. So think about the placement of your items and whether or not students should be able to access it or not. And I know there's only so much space, so we don't necessarily want students in everything that we have, but just kind of prioritize where things should go. Like my pens that I'm obsessed with, they're behind my desk so students don't take them. The construction paper that I have, that is on open shelves. If students were to get into it, I'd be a little bit annoyed if they mess it up, but I wouldn't really care because I don't need construction paper. Another little bonus tip here is to have a catch-all bin. So if you have some kind of like bin or box that sits somewhere that's easy for you to access, for you to just kind of toss some of these items in, whether it's like I'm gonna put it here until I have time to put it away later, or I'm not really sure where to put it, so I'm gonna put it here for now. It lets these items just kind of be corralled in this finite space, so it's not sprawling out and spreading all over and just making a huge mess. It's a contained mess. The next tip is to use the 1-minute rule. I love this. I use it at home. I kind of overuse it if I'm being honest, but the rule is that if it's going to take you 1 minute or less to put something away, put it away now. Don't let it sit there on your desk taking up space and just annoying and bugging you because it's still there. Just get up and put it away right now. It's only going to take you a minute or less. This is a way of preventing clutter. You're basically nipping it in the bud before it can actually become clutter. Just be choosy with it. Really ask yourself, is it only going to take me a minute to put away? I will get on a kick, usually at home, of finding like some kind of clutter, saying, oh, I'm gonna put this away, it'll take me 1 minute, and I put it away, and then I find something else to put away, and it kind of starts a chain reaction. I mean, it helps me get rid of clutter, so it's not a bad thing, but if I'm telling the kids like, oh yeah, 1 minute, let me just go put this away, and then 5 minutes later I've done all these other things instead, like that's a bit of a problem. I guess I'm kind of addicted to the 1 minute rule. So akin to the 1 minute rule is doing a 10-minute tidy. So that's basically setting aside time on a regular basis. I like to do mine weekly, like every Friday. And that's where you just take 10 minutes to clean up as much as you can, like the clutter that's accumulated, the things that are going to take more than a minute to put away, so they're still kind of sitting there. Just take 10 minutes to put those away. For me, I love what I call Friday filing. I'm a big fan of alliteration. I'm such a nerd. But anyway, on Friday, I will take all the papers that have accumulated that need to get filed away and file them away on Friday. And that's part of my like 10-minute tidy. So I have a letter tray that sits on my desk, and throughout the week, I just pop the papers in there and then I put them away all at once. And that's because these papers would take me more than a minute to put them away. And that's because my filing cabinet is across my classroom on the opposite corner of my desk. So it takes me time to like get up, take the paper. I have to unlock the filing cabinet. I have to get the keys for that and then put it away and then, you know, close, lock, and go back to my desk. It takes like roughly a minute, if not more. So I'll wait till the end of the week and do it all at once. And that way I'm actually saving time in that respect, that I'm not having to get up and put stuff away several times throughout one day. And again, if you have that catch-all bin or the letter tray like I mentioned, then you have this one space that you're basically taking care of to clean up. So you're taking 10 minutes to put everything away from that bin. And my last tip to keep your classroom clutter-free is to delegate to your students. Students are like an underutilized resource. Now, we might think that because they're in high school or middle school that they don't want to do these things for us, like they would in elementary school where they really want to please their teacher. High school kids, some of them still do. Like they still do want to help and they want to basically just be a good person. So don't think that you can't ask them to do stuff for you, because you totally can. In fact, sometimes you don't have to ask them. You can build it into your classroom routines. So for example, one procedure that we have in my classroom is students get their own supplies and they put their own supplies back, and I have basically caddies and bins set up for different supplies that we have, and I put them on a bookshelf that students pass on their way in, and that's where they get their papers for the day, their calculators, etc. So at the end of class, they are instructed, it's part of our routine, that they're going to put their supplies back where they found them on that bookshelf. And just having it be a routine makes it so that they do it without being asked every day. They just know that that's what they're supposed to do, and so they do it. Now, you may occasionally have students forget, or, you know, sometimes teenagers, they can be grumpy and just defiant for no reason, but there's usually another student in your classroom that's more than happy to like pick up the slack for them that one time. Or maybe I'm just lucky, I don't know. My students are pretty fantastic. But if you have an area in your classroom that you want to have straightened, just throw it out there. See if a student wants to do it. Sometimes, especially if you have a study hall, they're bored and they'd rather do that than just sit there. My school has a community service requirement, so we often have students that are looking for the opportunity to do something like that where they can get a community service hour, because they're helping, you know, the school community that way. Another thing that I like to do and just kind of keep in mind with students that are helpful like this is if I'm writing a college recommendation for them, I will put that in the letter of recommendation, talking about how helpful they are and how sweet they are, that they will go out of their way and help, you know, their teachers or whoever else. And that's not something that I can necessarily advertise to students. Like, if you do this for me, I'll, you know, grant you a good letter of recommendation. But usually those students that are so helpful and willing are the ones that I have a bond with, that they want a letter of recommendation for me. So it's super helpful in that respect, that it gives me something to write about. So if you're curious what else you could delegate to your students, these are some ideas from me and from some friends on Teacher Instagram. One thing that I like to have them do is pass back ungraded papers. So anything with a grade on it, I will not give students to pass back to other students. But if it's like, I just have like a check mark on it, I'll let them pass those back. That's a huge help. Another one is any of the cutting and laminating. Sometimes I like to sit down and just do stuff like that. For interactive notebooks, I would have students refill glue bottles because I'm one of the few people that is adamant that it needs to be liquid glue for an interactive notebook. So they will do that for me. Another one that's really fun is testing markers and highlighters and pens just to see which ones still work and to chuck the ones that don't. Pencil sharpening, you could also delegate. Putting away Chromebooks, cleaning up chairs. For those times when the copier is less than helpful, I like to have students staple things. In my classroom, I have an electric stapler. It's ancient. It's a privilege to be able to use it, so that's always exciting for students. It was also suggested that they could pass things out, refill things like a sticker wall or different supplies, wiping down desks, and another good one was helping other students. So it's not so much about clutter, but just helping students is always a good thing to delegate. And so those are my tips for keeping the classroom clutter-free. If you have any other tips that you'd like to add to that, please share them in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.